Have you ever find yourself in a chess game when things are falling apart? Your opponent is just hitting you on both sides and there seems to be no way out. In today's episode, things are changing. I will be showing you 6 essential defensive patterns every serious chess player must know to thrive and survive in difficult positions. Defense win championships, folks. I know many people hate defending, but you don't win points by hating this essential skill. Today, I will show you very important chunks to make you a much better defensive player. You will frustrate your opponents and you will gain those extra half points and full points that will really give you great satisfaction, folks. It's black to play here. White is hitting on h7. They have a beautiful knight and queen combo. Everything seems to be falling apart in a position like this, right? Just look at your position. Yes, you have an extra exchange, but your rook is sleeping on a8. Look at your bishop. Look at your pieces. I want you to take a stock. This is the first pattern that every serious player must master when it comes to defending. I will give you 2 choices then. Do you go king f8 or do you go h5? Tell me, what is the good looking move for black? Well, in terms of first appearance, maybe the king wants to evacuate like this. Seems reasonable, but now I'll show you a beautiful pattern called umbrella. h5 is a great move. You're closing down the h-file, and of course they will take en passant, and then you go king h8 and you say, ha ha ha, this pawn on h6 is serving like a shield, protecting your king. We call such pawns umbrella pawns in chess. They actually only help the defending side. Look how safe your king has become by the presence of the h6 pawn. This pawn is a piece of wood that is getting in the way of the white pieces, and that's a defensive pattern every serious defensive player or chess player must master. h5, very typical pattern in those structures. Then after this, king h8, a beautiful motif, a chunk, pattern, action in fact, that you must internalize. Instead, if you go king f8, then you allow queen h6 check, and the king cannot really flee to the queen side. If this will be possible, I also accept that, folks, but in this position it's very, very difficult for the king to flee, and you're facing enormous difficulties even in this position as black. So please compare this position with the umbrella position, h5. You're stopping queen h7. This queen looks ridiculous on h4 suddenly, so the only way forward is en passant, but then king h8, and you say, hey, I got you, your attack has evaporated, more or less. Now, please apply this umbrella chunk to this position, folks. Black to play in this position. What are you seeing? Black has an extra rook. Look at this. We have an extra rook, but white is putting pressure on the bishop on g7. Please stop the video right now and find a beautiful defensive resource for black that secures your king, that makes your king very, very secure in this position, folks. You're a great player if you found the move knight e8. Knight e8 is stopping rook takes g7, and after hg7 you just simply go knight e6 and say, ha ha ha, I force you to create an umbrella pawn on g7. That pawn is covering and shielding my king. My king is tanking this pawn to serve like a shield. Look at the rook, has no activity behind the pawn on g7, right? You see the applicants of this. Now you learn this pattern. I'm giving you a chance to apply it in this position. Yes, such pawns are actually just welcome for us. Now the knight is in the game. You will play b4 and attack the white king on the other side. You nullified and stopped their kingside push by playing this way. Pattern number 2, close to umbrella concept. Padlock formation, folks. White plays the move h4. Please take a stock here. The kings have castled on opposite flanks, which means it's pawn storm, attack, that will decide this game. They want to open up lines on the king side, and you want to close everything on the king side. Set your goal properly. Black's goal is to keep the king side closed to secure the king on g8. Which move gives you that, folks? You're a great player if you knew this pattern before. You go g6 and you create a padlock pawn formation. When those 4 pawns are standing like that, side by side, with 1 rank separating them, we are talking about padlock pawn formation that every defensive player must know. because this ensures things will be locked down on the king side. If they go h5, you go g5, everything is locked. If they go g5, you go h5, everything is locked, which means those rooks are sleeping. Those rooks cannot function in attacking your king, and look how safe your king is feeling in this pawn structure. If you don't play the move g6, if you play b5, then you're inviting the opening move g5. They want to open up the g file to attack your king. If you then go h5, hoping for g6, they won't give you the second chance. They will play g6 to open up lines on the g file. If you then play f6, then you get hit with moves like this, and your king is getting mated, right? Whoops! I'm sure you found yourself in those situations where you got mated without knowing what went wrong, because you didn't know the padlock pawn formation, right? Pattern number 3, folks. They are attacking you on the king side potentially. They have these ideas. They want to open up the h file for your rooks. They want to later get a knight on f5. Your king might be attacked on the king side later on, right? Just look at this. White's all the extra space. White is the outpost on f5. All the potential attackers on the h file. So, what do? What do you do with your king, folks? How do you secure your king here? Well, we know that first rule of bravery is to flee, right? There's a saying like that. You start evacuating the king side. The king starts running for his life. The king starts to run towards the queen side because the queen side is safe haven. Look at that. Talking about padlock formation, look how closed the queen side is, and your king will be secure as a little baby on the queen side, on, let's say, on b7, for example, right? So your king anticipates White's ensuing attack on the h file and White's ensuing initiative with knight on f5. Given White improved their position significantly on the king side, your king is no longer there on the king side, right? For example, after king c7, you defend the d6 pawn and your king is extremely secure in this position. Just take a stock and ask yourself, how can White ever attack the king on c7? Now you also understand the locked up structure on the queen side is shielding our king in this position. Defensive technique number 4, knowing your endgame patterns and knowing to set up stalemate defenses. You can reverse engineer your way sometimes as a defender to achieve a stalemate position where they can't make any progress. In this position, folks, Black's position looks extremely dire. White has 2 extra pawns, connected pawns. Bishop is amazing. The knight sucks. Your king is also terrible. It looks like it's an impossible defensive task. And then Black player plays knight h6. And the White player is shocked. What is going on here? He asks himself. That's from a grandmaster game, by the way. And White just takes the knight, hoping for this variation, folks. White was hoping for this variation. In this case, White is winning despite the fact that the h-pawn is on the wrong color of the bishop. White still wins because the king can no longer stay on h8. This variation was simply winning for White actually, yeah? So I can show you some moves. The king cannot take that pawn, but then I'm slowly pushing you around. I'm slowly supporting my pawn, and this is in fact winning for White. But what went wrong after knight h6 gh? What went wrong? White ignored the move king h8, and Black is saying that's a stalemate defense because your bishop is totally helpless in supporting those h-pawns. Why? Because the bishop is on the wrong color of the promotion square. That's an endgame pattern you must know as well, folks, right? Black is reverse engineering their way to achieve this position. Well, you can make all the moves in the world. My king will never leave the corner. If you ever play king f8, stalemate, right? It's so obvious. The bishop can no longer chase the black king from the blockading post on h8. And the moment you approach with your king, it will be a stalemate position, right? So that's a beautiful defensive trick, almost like a trap, that you invite them to transition to a fortress position. Talking about stalemate positions, you must know this position. You must know how to defend this position with the black pieces. I have so many students across the years that they did not know the technique. Pawn endgames are very common. Inevitably, you will end up in such positions where you're defending against the extra pawn. It's actually a very simple mechanism, folks, right? It's just a threefold mechanism. You always move straight back in this position. Let's say they go king f3. You almost always go straight back because you're inviting them to play king f4 and you will gain the opposition. When the king improves, you always stand in front of that king. That's a pattern, defensive pattern you must know. That's the way to defend this position. Thus, to make progress, white has to push the pawn. Then, the second step, you always stand in front of the pawn. Just like this, when they play king e4, you tell me the next move, folks. What is the right technique here? Yes, you go straight one square behind. Why? Because no matter how the white king improves, you will always stand in front of that king. This piece of knowledge is crucial. You must know this, folks. If they wait, you always stand in front of the pawn, of course. Inevitably, they will play a move like this. Then you always stand in front. If they play like this, you always stand in front, right? When they push e6, what do? You tell me. Yes, we always stand in front of the pawn once it pushes. And here comes the crucial question. Many players, beginners, they go wrong here and they spoil the drawn endgame. Yes, what is the right move? The most flexible is of course king e8 because you're anticipating both of these moves and you will make sure you're standing in front of that king. Opposition, thus they have to push the pawn to improve. Thus you stand in front of that pawn. And after of course king e6, you know that you reached your goal because this is a stalemate position. Just like in the previous example, your goal is to set up a stalemate defense in this case. Many players in this position, many players, they go wrong. They choose either this or this, which both loses. Because if you go king f8, you allow white to gain the opposition. Zugzwang, your king has to give way. And after king e8, they play the move e7. And there is no more stalemate defense. And they are winning like this. Please, folks, this is an essential pawn endgame pattern that you must internalize. You should be able to play these moves even in blitz and bullet games. This must be in your memory, like long-term memories, and it should be accessible directly in actual games. So please master this stalemate defense. Pattern number 5, active defense, folks. Now we are talking about more like strategic sides. That it's a great policy in rook endgames as well. Active defense, but I will show you other endgames, for example this minor piece endgame, to show the effectiveness of active defense. That's the way to solve your problems most of the time, folks. Alright, counterattack is usually the best defense in chess. So in this position, please take a stock, evaluate how terrible black's position looks like, right? You have this weakness on h7, this weakness on e6, the bishop shines over your knight, his king is much more active, your king, they are putting pressure on the pawn on a7. If you play the move, very passive move, king b8, they will improve with bishop c6 and the bishop will shoot all these weaknesses on the king's side. Look at your knight. It's a Zugzwang position. The knight cannot move, the king cannot move. They will slowly improve their pieces and even come up with a4, a5 plan to rip open the queen side. Look at this. Once you play passively, white has all the time in the world to then take your pawn on c5 with a completely winning position. Terrible knight, terrible king. Game over, disaster. So, what is the active defense then? I want you to stop the video right now, folks. Please look at your knight. Look how terrible that piece has become in the main line. Now, please change the picture. You must have seen one resource right now to make your knight a happy camper in this position. And yes, folks, you're a great player if you then find the move c4. You say, please take my pawn and I will activate my knight accordingly. Look what a beast your knight has become, hitting the bishop. We don't even stop there. What's the next move? You tell me. Of course, knight d3. You created an octopus knight that is putting pressure on the white's pawns. That's the spirit of active defense in chess. Suddenly, his king is offside on a7 and your knight became an amazing piece. You're saving this position by natural play. Also, after knight c5, if they want to control your knight with bishop c2, you tell me the next move. Yes, basic pawn endgame knowledge, folks. You still go knight d3, you're still putting pressure on those weaknesses. If they ever take your knight, oh boy, they're allowing an unstoppable passed pawn and you're swindling your way into victory by active defense. One more version of active defense when you find yourself in terrible looking binding situations. It's from real game from Bogolyubov and Spielman, black to play, folks. Again, if you look deeper, white pieces are dominating the board, right? Dominating knight, dominating rook. Even the king will be dominating you on d4. It looks like a terrible position. If you make the most defensive looking move, knight c8, they will play king d4. Look at their king. And if you keep on playing passively, they will invade the rook c6. I mean, that's a terrible position, right? This is a pure disaster for black to play this way. So, taking a step back, folks, I want you to, again, engage in active defense to turn the tables, to get something from this position before it gets too late. Refuse passivity for a single moment. What are you seeing? Resourcefulness, folks. You're talking about sacrificing a knight for 2, in fact 3 pawns. You, by taking on f5, you activate your rook, you hit the king while also going rook e4 to pick up the final pawn as well. Look at this. You sacrifice your terrible knight for 3 pawns, you activate your rook in the process, you created 2 connected pass pawns, plus 1 more pass where it's been created, his king is cut off, and suddenly this game is complete equality. It's very close to full equality right now for black, and that's a much easier way to defend. Spielmann played like this, and he managed to draw the game very, very quickly from this position. By offering a rook trade, they ended up in a drawn endgame. So this is also a good recipe. In general, when you're defending, you should generally try to exchange pawns, right? Because with every single pawn exchange, the potential of those pass pawns to promote to a queen is diminishing. So as a defensive side, that's also a good technique to know. Generally, pawn exchanges are favoring you, but piece exchanges are generally favoring the opponent with extra material especially, right? So seek for those pawn exchanges and refuse passivity. If you have to play defensive moves like this with no prospects whatsoever, with clear improvement for your opponent, that's a clear sign, right? Strategically, to maybe drastically change the picture with activity. And the final and the 6th defensive pattern you must know is, before you resign, exhaust all the options. Exhaust all the resources. Chess is a very resourceful game. It's full of resources. So sometimes you lower your guard too early. You have premature resignations. It's black to play here, folks. You're about to get mated with queen a7. It looks like a disaster. No natural move will save your king. That's mate. Well, that's mate. The king cannot flee, right? Bishop move doesn't change anything in this position. You still get mated, right? Like in 2 moves, basically. Just like here. Impossible looking position for black, right? No natural move is left in the position to defend this position. Do you resign, or do you then look for all the resources one last time? It's a great puzzle, folks. Black to play. Now, I will show you the solution, but first, one little prompt for you. Have you seen this alignment between the rook and the queen? That will be your saving grace. Maybe there will be a way to push the pawn with tempo in 2 moves to take their queen on a4. And that's a great prompt for you to find the move queen h2 check, folks. What an amazing resource this is. This queen sacrifice sets up for this counter defense of takes, followed by taking their queen with a winning material advantage, right? So after queen h2 check, they cannot take the queen. After king f1, please continue, folks. Please continue, because even here, it looks like black should resign because there is no natural check left. This won't come with check on the king, but chess is full of resources, I said. Queen takes g2, bam. What a defensive miracle, right? If you take the queen, this happens with the same idea. f3 comes with check this time, and you pick up the queen on a4 on the next turn. So after queen takes g2 check, the king has to go to e1. Even here, folks, please continue our miraculous defensive journey. How do you utilize this tension again? Yes, with the same idea. This queen, this crazy queen, the queen is turning crazy, right? She says, please take me, because I want to take the opponent's queen on the next turn with this check. Such an annoying queen, right? Well, if you take my queen, the game is over. Black wins. After king d2, you tell me the next move. Queen e3 check. Now our queen is a great piece. Bishop f5 check. And look at this. Our counter trick has worked to our benefit, folks. We are completely turning the tables. After this move, we can even take this with check, and the king can no longer escape properly. If he goes to b1, then this comes with check with a very nice finish in the end, right? And if king c1, then you see it's a very nice finish. Mate in 6 by force in this position. Even our rook can activate. You see what's going from here, right? The king has no escape, and our attack is succeeding. Do we miss any other resource? Bishop f5 check. There's nothing to do, right? Queen e4 loses the queen. Rook d3 is the only move. After this, of course, this allows queen takes d3 check, and the king gets pushed around. F takes g3. We can even pick up the queen. Look at this. It's a disaster for white. But taking a step back, What is the lesson here? Before you resign, look at all the resources. Look at all the alignment issues. It's also about the great tactical awareness. You should see the alignment between those pieces. You should use it to your advantage in this case, right? Beautiful. And I will leave you as this homework position, folks. Black to play. Again, we are testing resourcefulness in this case. Also, final lesson is, of course, great calculation skills. Defending is a very concrete business in chess. Attacks can be based on general plans and general patterns, but defending is usually very concrete. You need great calculation skills move by move to survive sometimes. And this is also great consolidation exercise. It's a game of Rustam Kashimjanov with the black pieces. And here it looks like it's a disastrous position for black because of this tension and pressure on g7. Well, if you play the most natural move g6, it doesn't work for us because of this. Then they will pick up the rook on e4 with a great position. So it looks like we are busted actually in this position as black, right? It just looks like we are losing with natural play. So I posted on X, by the way. I got great response from people. That's a great exercise. Black to play. Resourcefulness, folks. Black is a way to achieve very advantageous position with concrete calculation. Look at those resources. Don't shy away from impossible looking moves. Look at the entire board. See where the Viking is also placed. Avoid the blunders and come up with a great way to escape from this position with an advantage. All right, folks. This concludes our episode with 6 very important defensive patterns every chess player must master. Because once you master them, your confidence will increase in your defensive skills. I know many people lower their guards in a bad position. They just lose confidence. Then that affects their play. They play even worse in those moments. That's why you need such patterns and chunks to gain confidence. But you must also do calculation training. Check my course, Fundamental Chess Calculation Skills, contains dedicated chapters on defending with all the top processes, even deeper processes, for example, the method of elimination and so on. We are drilling those exercises by always connecting it to those recurrent and important patterns and chunks too as well, folks, right? I'm expecting your feedback on YouTube about this position, but also in general. Do you like this video? Did I miss some other resource perhaps that I can continue in my future videos? But at least, to my mind, these were 6 very important patterns and skills to make you a much better defensive player. Well, as they say, right? Defense wins championships. And good luck in becoming a chess champion. And please keep on following my channel for tips on chess improvement. Thank you so much.